Great.
record button, and we'll move forward. There'll be some other people that'll join us. I know 2 or 3 people have already told me they'll be late. And then a number of people said, well, if you're recording it, I'm gonna go ahead and keep watching Matlock, and then later on I'll be able to get the recording and tune in there. Steven's from Texas originally, so I can make Matlock jokes, and he understands that.
Definitely.
I feel kind of silly doing this, but there may be somebody in the future that watches this that doesn't know me, so I'll just say my name is Rob Brown. I'm the president and CEO of Youth Reach International. I'm joined tonight by Olga Senaduk. Olga is the director of donor care and relations here at Youth Reach International. She also serves on our board of directors, and she is heavily connected to and invested in this partnership between Youth Reach International and CodeBrave. And tonight, as you read in the invitation that went out earlier this week, hopefully we didn't pester you with that. We're always looking for that balance, right, Olga, of how often to remind people, but not too much.
Yes.
So it went out Monday, we skipped Tuesday, it went out Wednesday, and then just a real quick reminder this morning to join us as well. Stephen Wilbur is now in Seattle, Washington. He'll share a little bit of his story of how he got there, but he is a co-founder of the CodeBrave project along with Clementine Brown, who is with us today. Clem, it's 4 a.m. I think right now in Beirut, so we told her, you just sleep, don't worry about it. Stephen can handle this part of it. But we just wanted to have an opportunity here at the beginning of the year to share with you some of the momentum that many of you and a lot of other people have helped us build in this partnership between Youth Reach International and CodeBrave, and also hear about some of the things that are possible in the future because of the momentum that we have behind us. It's been about 4 or 5 years now, I think, that I found out, met Stephen actually through some friends that are still in Beirut.
Yes.
Brandy and Amber Black, they're trying to get out, and it looks like maybe, just maybe, there's going to be a pretty sweet story unfolding in the next few months, hopefully, of them getting back to the States with someone very dear to them. We'll talk about that when the time is right. But I think at that first trip that I made to Beirut, Stephen, I think you and I just met each other in an office real quick. And I think we've agreed that it was like at first sight. We didn't have much time to talk, but man, we felt a great connection with each other. And then the Lord's just kind of taken that and developed that over the last couple of years. Had a chance to be together in Minneapolis a few months ago now, and to keep building on this relationship and partnership, and to kind of set the table for some of the things that we'll be talking about tonight. So as all of you know, all of you on this call definitely know, Youth Reach International exists to see 3 things happen in the lives of orphaned and at-risk youth. That is spiritual formation, positive role models or mentoring, and then practical life skills. And in our partnership with CodeBrave, they have some amazing things going on in the practical life skills area. You'll hear a lot about that tonight. They have said, you know what, we need help building out this mentoring process a little bit more. And that's kind of, I was talking to Olga today, what we're trying to do right now, I feel like, is level our foundation a little bit and get caught up in some areas so that we have a good, strong foundation to stand on, and we can start sharing some of these principles of building out a mentoring community that has proven so key and core to the success of our ministry in different places around the world. That's what we want to see in Beirut. And we've dreamed, we've prayed, we've talked with Steve and his team about that. And we think that's where we're headed in the future. But tonight we're going to be focusing on this idea of life skills training, specifically as it relates to the CodeBrave project. So, and also I'm going to encourage everyone, if you didn't get to hear the 45 minute deal this afternoon and you'd like to, all you got to do is shoot me an email and I'll send you a link to it. Because really what Stephen's going to do is stand on a few of the things that Clem said today and not give quite as much background information as she did. So if we kind of pick up in if it feels like we're picking up in mid-conversation tonight, it's because, well, we're picking up kind of in mid-conversation tonight. Clem and Steve are co-founders. They really understand, you know, the bookends of how this thing works. So it's a very fluid conversation that I feel like we're having. It's just Steve isn't quite as pleasant to look at as Clem was this afternoon, but that's okay. That's not a problem. Let's start with this, you know, Stephen, to appreciate where we are right now, where you are in this process, where we are in this partnership. What are some of the barriers that the CodeBrave approach overcomes as it relates to helping orphans, refugee kids, at-risk youth have a more hopeful future? What are some of those difficult things that this approach allows you to overcome?
Definitely. So, and you know, you can go back to the other meeting to listen to Clem talk about our founding, but I would just come back to how one of our students asked to learn to code. One of the students in the shelter we were working with asked to learn to code because he saw it as a barrier to overcome, or he saw it as a way to overcome barriers in his own life, right? He saw the fact that he could build something remotely, and it made him really curious about how he could work because he saw his peers having a really hard time working, sometimes coming back to the shelter and asking for a place to stay. And I think for us, the barriers that our program overcomes are many. One, there just isn't a lot of tech education in Lebanese schools, or in a lot of the informal schools. The tech education doesn't bring students up to speed on where the global economy is. And as things accelerate more and more quickly, it's going to be harder and harder for those students to stay up. And so there's a part of it is just bringing students up to a baseline of using the technology of now, understanding how to write emails, how to share documents, and things like that. But there are some critical barriers in Lebanon right now. One is that the economy is bottoming out. And so as there are fewer and fewer opportunities to work and live, earn a living wage within Lebanon, CodeBrave teaches students how to access job markets in other countries. And we're connected to companies that work with groups in Dubai and Europe, and we've done internships, now that are based in the States and have more people who want to do internships like that. And so using a platform that is global opens up the global economy to our students in a way that the Lebanese economy doesn't offer them those opportunities right now. We also are able to offer education at a time when a lot of students can't access that education when COVID puts things into remote learning. Like our students who go home with a donated cell phone or a donated tablet, or some even with a laptop in our more advanced programs, they have a way to do all their other schooling too, right? Like they get 3G packages from us to learn. And so their other schooling can happen more seamlessly through our program just being a part of their day. So we overcome obstacles that can happen because of social unrest and COVID, where schools can't meet. We also overcome job market obstacles, and then I think there's just a piece of sustainable work. Like this work is sustainable, it's future proof, it can adapt to the new and changing economies. Whereas I've known students personally who had trainings in maybe being a hairdresser or sewing fabrics and things like that. And that's so contingent on who is in the neighborhood, who comes by the shop, maybe how's the shop owner running the business. Maybe the shop owner goes out of business and then they're out of luck. And a lot of students we work with, their resumes in terms of like schooling or whatever may not be as impressive. They could be really talented kids, but they're not able to go to some French company and say, hire me and pay for my, legal status and everything over there. Whereas they might have the skills to work remotely, and we enable them to do that.
When we think about who the students are that you're working with, we're not talking about a very mobile group of people because of legal issues, because of migrant status or lack of status. Talk a little bit about how this affords kids, graduates, the opportunity to have access in other places remotely that they're just physically never going to be able to kind of talk about how stuck some of your students are in Lebanon.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say the majority of families that we're working with don't own a car, or if they do, it's in use all the time, or maybe it's in need of repair. These are not students who typically would do any work outside of what's already in the family. And when I say that, I mean, a lot of our students have parents who maybe run a local market, maybe they work at the corner store, they're selling goods in the local town. But that's where the student has connections. And Lebanon is a place that is really, really localized. Like towns have a religious affiliation. And so oftentimes people who have a rich history in Lebanon won't move outside of areas that are associated with their same, sect or their same religious affiliation. And so what we get to do is connect, Yusuf, I think, is a student that Clem talked about earlier. We can connect Yusuf with a company in New York. We can connect Hamid with somebody in France to, work on their website, or they can work with a company in Lebanon from their house, and that company can be based, be getting work from all over the world. So just by using the internet and the spaces that have opened up in the last 10 to 20 years, those students have access to other job markets. And then I think, I know this wasn't your question, Rob, but I didn't mention one of the key ways that we overcome barriers. And that's that a lot of our students have experienced acute forms of trauma. They maybe have witnessed very difficult things. They maybe experienced really difficult things. And those kinds of experiences make it very difficult for a student to learn and take risks sometimes. Maybe not everybody, it depends on how they internalized it and what kind of supports they had. But we've witnessed students who come from really difficult backgrounds have a hard time risking in class because they feel like if they fail, that's it. Like if I fail at this, that means I'm a failure, and how could I engage this? And our students are trained, our teachers, excuse me, are trained in educational psychology and trauma-based education approaches that welcome those students to the table. They understand where our students are coming from, and they're providing the adequate structure and nurture in their classes so that those students feel like I can come to class, feel competent, I know what to expect, I know my teacher has my best in mind. And by showing up that way, we welcome the maximum number of students that we can in any particular center to thrive in our program. Whereas like a visiting teacher, I mean, when I was working in a shelter, I saw a number of programs come through that maybe were there, for a day here and there, and they had the best intentions, but without building that relationship and that trust, students would kind of be like, what am I going to do with this? Or this person doesn't know me. And our teachers are there through thick and thin with the students and build trust ultimately over time by that consistency. So that, I think actually that's the most core way that we overcome barriers to learning. And it just so happens that coding and tech education is timely. It's well suited for the world that we live in now. But I think our teachers both care for the students, and then their actual training in real psychology methods make us a great program for these kids.
Clem said something very interesting today during the lunch hour. She said that our teachers are trained to be a stable presence in the classroom.
Yes.
Given all of the insanity that these kids
Yes.
come from, our teachers are trained to be a stable presence in the classroom. That really
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
You have never asked me for a chance to brag, but I'm going to give you one right now if you need that. And we'd like for you to do that. Only you and Clem and God himself know, all of the obstacles that you guys have overcome to get this far. Kind of share with us whether it was a, administrative or a technology or acquisition and, accessibility, or whether it was a mentality challenge. What's one of the biggest obstacles that you've overcome to get as far as you have in this program?
Well, I think we've had two big ones. There have been a number of challenges. I would say the biggest probably was in the fall of 2019. I would combine the revolution and the protests that were happening in Lebanon with COVID lockdowns, because in Lebanon, once that hit, it was like everybody shut their doors and, nonprofits were not going in, and it all went remote. And so we were faced with, it started with, blocked highways and roads in the street in the fall of 2019. And then eventually, everything was shut down. And I think we really have showed up, I would say in short, taking that stable presence in the classroom into an institutional level and saying, we are going to commit. And I never talk about this, and I wouldn't unless Rob had asked me to explicitly. But when we were working in a shelter for previously homeless youth, and when the lockdowns happened, I continued to go in and mentor some of the older students in that shelter. And they continued working on they had to be supervised to be on a computer just because of the legality of, the home and them being in custody and stuff like that. So they had to be supervised. So I would go in, mentor the kids in job training and interpersonal skills. And then they would spend time with their CodeBrave teachers on Zoom, continuing to work through the websites they've been working on. And one of them had an internship with a company in Beirut. And that all kept going through the summer and into the fall, because we yeah, we just kept showing up. And I parked my car because the village was closed. So there were literally gates that closed the roads of the town. And I parked my car a mile away from the shelter and walked in, walked in at 11 a.m. or whenever, and then walked back out again at 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Every time I went in to do that. And I say that it's like, okay, well, I did that, but I think I've seen a similar commitment in our team. I think when there's been a barrier to classes happening, our teachers figure out how to get there or how to teach remotely. When students haven't had internet, we have found a way to get them internet packages. I think we just have pushed through in a time where it's been challenging, and a lot of organizations haven't, maybe because the resources just weren't there, and because we have access to fresh dollars in the US, and pounds from the UK. We've had the resources to do that, but I think we've really committed to the students, and I can say that, uh, from the bottom of my heart. Yeah. And then I think funding, early on, Clem and I funded the project on our own. And that was something we were really happy to do, I think, and we recognized that we were blessed to be in a position to do that. And we were able to get to a point where people came alongside us and funded the project. And now, we're not in that position. And I just praise God for everybody who has come along. But I think working with Clem, just to build her up a little bit, she's not here, but like, Clem is just an incredible, she's an incredible person. And I think she is so, so committed. And so there were times where I was like, Clem, I don't know if this is going to work. And she would say, we have to do it. And I knew she was right. But I think our having a co-founder approach rather than one founder, and then as we've brought people in, the people who have come on board have just bolstered the team to where I think there's a mutual encouragement in the team that keeps us moving forward. So yeah.
That's so encouraging because, I look at this screen here and I see Catherine Shellhouse from St. Louis. Catherine remembers coming to Siberia with us a number of years ago.
Wow.
And how our focus was those kids, but really our focus was those mentors, the ones that were going to have relationship with those kids long after we were gone. And Catherine loved on kids while she was there, but she really loved on mentors. Tim and Sheila Dunn have spent multiple summers with us in Siberia. They love kids. Trust me, they're professional grandparents and professional great grandparents, but they also understand the idea of investing in the people that are going to have access to these kids long after the professional grandparents and great grandparents go back home. A number of people that are on this call have experienced that with us. So when you start talking about the commitment level of your volunteers and your teachers, that's great. That's great, but that has to be embodied by the people who are casting the vision. And you and Clem have embodied that, remarkably well. I think you remember, Stephen, and I can say this in front of this crowd, but I both patted you on the back and kicked you in the pants when I heard you guys had been funding this out of your own resources. When a missionary and an NGO worker are funding something, we can probably do better than that, So, but that speaks to your commitment. We celebrate that. You have to do what you have to do in some moments when you believe in something until you get the kind of momentum going, that you have now. So thank you for bragging a little bit about some great things that have been done in the past. I'm calling it bragging. You can call it, testifying to the Lord's faithfulness or whatever, but talk a little bit about what's right in front of you right now. Obviously in leadership and in trailblazing frontier kind of initiatives like this, facing obstacles and overcoming obstacles is, it's like getting up and putting your pants on every day.
Yeah, it's part of the job.
What are some of the ones that are kind of right in front of CodeBrave right now that you can share with us?
Yeah, I think there's a few. The first one I think right now is just the situation in Lebanon is really dire, and for some of our teachers, there are opportunities elsewhere that may seem more appealing, right? And I think a lot of our teachers work part-time, and we're at this really interesting part of our scaling where when we started, we were only in one center, right? So some of our teachers are working all day because we're just in this one place and we've got this one place to look at. As we've scaled, we're at a really interesting point where in the economy, a number of our teachers are supporting their families on a part-time salary, right? But I think they're asking questions of, what is the future of Lebanon? And we have found a number of teachers who are super, super committed to the vision of CodeBrave. And I think we want them to be able to realize their own professional goals as well, like within the organization. And so I think it's almost like I feel like we can't scale fast enough for one, the students who we're working with, and two, the teachers who we have on the team. And so that's a really transparent, kind of director level assessment of things. It's like we have amazing people. I honestly believe that we have the best people possible for the jobs that they're in right now. We have amazing people on our team, and they care deeply about this vision, and I want them to be able to see that out. And I think scale and just consistency with our centers are a part of that. Another big challenge for us right now is just the fact of, that Clem mentioned, of electricity and internet and things like that. But I think with the resources, as she talked about, we can basically overcome any obstacle that's in front of us. We can get people 3G, we can get people batteries and USBs for their electricity. With enough resources, we can get to basically any student in the country. But as we scale and as the country is figuring itself out, I think those are two really big challenges that are in front of us. The last challenge I think I want to talk about is connecting students with mentors as we scale. I think at the end of the day, that individual investment of somebody who can build into them and teach them job skills and walk with them. We've seen in the internships that have happened, we have seen how powerful it is for the student to work with one individual who is giving them direct feedback, day to day, and getting to process with them. And that kind of empowerment of feeling like, oh, this person sees what I'm working on, they care about it, and the student sees their own results as they improve in their skills. I think that has been incredibly powerful for that personal connection. I think our teachers make that connection in classes, but to really take it to the next level, those mentorships, and I would include internships in that kind of general category of people really building into our students one-on-one. So I think those are the biggest barriers. I mean, funding is always something that we're looking for, but I think on a kind of practical level, and like, how is the organization working? Is it healthy? Are we meeting the needs of the students? I think it's like building into our students through mentorship, and then being able to build into our teachers too. I think we've always seen the benefit of running CodeBrave in Lebanon as a two-layered thing. It's like we are not only building into the next generation, but we are offering decent work to the teachers who are there right now. And so we want to do that well too. Yeah.
One of my most enjoyable conversations with you and Clem so far has been the conversation where I say, let Youth Reach International help you care for your teachers. Like,
yeah.
Let us just come alongside you and help us care for them, because you and I, a number of us here, are volunteers, or we lead volunteer organizations, or we know about volunteers. It's a whole lot easier to care for a current volunteer than it is to go out and find another one.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely,
that's one of the things I know we always need help showing appreciation and gratitude to our volunteers. And Olga and I were just meeting after the meeting with Clem today, working on some budgeting things this year. And I'm actually looking at a line item for our work with you in Lebanon this year that's simply showing encouragement, love, TLC, and special care for your volunteers. That's a fun line item to think of. You know what?
That's amazing.
Postage and office supplies. Yeah, that kind of comes and goes with excitement. But when you think about creative ways to show unconditional love and acceptance to your kids, but also sincere gratitude and appreciation for your volunteers. That's where you really do rise above in the marketplace that you're in there. That's why somebody might stay with you longer, even though there may be, who knows, more upward mobility, or maybe even better money somewhere else. They know they're being fed, in their pocketbooks, with their souls being fed by what they do with you too. So I commend you for working as hard at that as you have, and I look forward to celebrating with you even more of that special care shown toward your volunteers, and then we want to help build out that volunteer base.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, I'd love to share just two quick stories. One is we have an employee who's just super talented. She's a core team member who was considering, looking outside, and even applied for jobs outside the country just to kind of see what, it wasn't like that was going to happen, but she was just kind of going to see, and got offered, I think, everything she applied for. She's fantastic. And then at the end of the day, she said, you know what, in this whole process, I realized that the mission of CodeBrave is too important for me to leave right now. And I want to stay and work on this. And it's like, it's just and yeah, I mean, I'm just so honored to work with, folks with that caliber. And I think that's who we have on the team. The other story I wanted to tell is we had a teacher for a while who we recognized had a lot of specialization in educational psychology as well, and just was a great coder too. And she ended up becoming our STEM lead. Her name's Eliana, and you can see her on the website. She's just fantastic, and I think I've loved seeing her step into a role where she's getting to teach, which is something that she loves, but she's also getting to lead on creating safe and stable environments for our students on an organization-wide level. And like seeing people thrive in the roles that we're in is like something that we are so about. And I think our mission of social change through tech education is really throughout the organization. I think we want to do it right by the kids, and just like you're saying, Rob, we want to do right by the staff and volunteers as well. So we just want to be able to keep doing that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Share with us maybe a specific story. I love that you shared ones of your teachers, but get down kind of that end user level if we can, and just share with us the story of a life that's been impacted for the better by CodeBrave.
Absolutely. So I'm going to share about a student named Khalil who, if you follow our materials, you've seen his name before. We have a lot of stories, but I know Khalil pretty well. It's, we're up to 5.5 years now, I think. And thanks to the internet, we're still in touch. So I get to chat with him every now and then. And when I met Khalil, he was very angry on the surface. But what that really, when we drilled down in conversations, I think he had very little hope for his own future. And often that would take shape in terms of in anger and things like that. He took advantage of every class that he could with CodeBrave after a while. He would come in, he did an internship through us, he worked really hard on every project that was there. And then last year, he was even settled with a family. Like he's being adopted by a family in Lebanon, which is just, I mean, it's amazing. And he had grown so much. And then I got married last summer. So we were talking a little bit about that. And he said, Stephen, I always told you that you needed to get married. now you've gotten married, and that's great. And he said, and I want to tell you too, that I always knew that family was the most important thing. But I hadn't gotten to experience that yet. And now I have, because he's in this family. And in the freedom of this context of being in this family, he is doing a user experience course, which is it's a website kind of based course with Google on his own with a tutor. And he's like, what I love about this story is Khalil has been an amazing person to work with over the last 5 years or so and watch him grow. But I love that through our program, he took this personal responsibility of his learning. And even when the organization left the center, even when he's not attending classes with us anymore, he is still pursuing this learning on his own and taking what he's learned. And I think it's something that's so core to our vision for students, is not that they would need us, but we would get them to the point where they don't need us anymore. And they're able to teach themselves and find the information they need on their own. And so as they get older in our program, we start to teach them, here are databases you can look at for information. Here are great websites you can go to find out how to do a skill, or here's YouTube, things like that. But I love how in the core of his being, he has said, I'm going to take responsibility over my own learning and find it out. And I think it's really just a model for what we would like for our other students too. So, and he's not the only one. I just am really close to him. So I have to talk about him, because I see, even after I left Lebanon last May, he's still doing it. Like, it's incredible. So really proud of him. Yeah.
On a personal level, I can understand why that resonates with you so much. You stay at this long enough, and you start to see some people that you had hoped were committed to this far beyond their personal connection to you. And then later you see just how committed they are. And you realize it was never about you. How
It was
dare
never
you
about
ever think it
me.
was about me, you know? So
Yeah,
I celebrate
exactly.
that with you. I really do.
Yeah.
Well, I attended, a gathering that you had done a couple of months ago with some of your connections, and learned a lot through that. I know we've had a chance to open up our understanding tonight a good bit of some of the good things that you are doing. A lot of what the Youth Reach International crowd hears is through my communication, through Olga's communication. But as this partnership grows, we really hope there can be more of these kind of interactions between us, because even some of the assumptions that a lot of our supporters and partners make about work that Youth Reach International does, a lot of it's based in an Eastern European context,
Mm,
where there's never problems with electricity. There's lots of problems, but we always have
sure,
electricity. There's never a
sure.
problem with homelessness. You will die quickly in Siberia if you're homeless. That's just not one of the challenges there. So I encourage a lot of our people that are kind of wired into that Eastern European post-Soviet mindset to think about even some of the more difficult circumstances that our friends and partners in Beirut are dealing with domestic, internal turmoil, both on a political
Mm,
level, and then you have that catastrophe of the explosion August 4th
mm.
of 2020. You have COVID and all the challenges, of that. You have an economy, which, Stephen, you said it during your presentation. The World Bank says this is the worst economy in 150 years or something. What's kind
They
of
said, yeah,
talk to that a
top
little bit about
three.
what the economic situation is like in Lebanon right now.
Yeah, I'd love to. So the World Bank has called it one of the top three worst economic fallouts in 150 years. And the reason for this is the economy was based basically on a presumption that it was worth more than it was, or it was generating more than it was. There were a lot of bad loans. The banks were giving 10% interest on checking accounts to get new people, things that are just like unreasonable to do, right? So for a long time, the Lebanese currency was pegged to the dollar. And then once people started losing faith in the Lebanese economy and it lost that peg, it has just soared. When I moved there, the exchange rate was $1 to 1,500 lira, and now it's gone past 30,000 lira to the dollar. I mean, it's just we're talking about a 4 or 5% or less of its original value, and so a lot of businesses have closed. I think people really wonder about the future in Lebanon without some kind of external intervention. And I think we believe that this next generation of Lebanese children can build that future for themselves, and it could come from within the country, but that will take some action on the behalf of people. And I think right now the country is really figuring out who is going to be that person, and as long as the powers that be are there, people are unwilling to, or it looks doubtful that there will be change. So yeah, so the currency is worth a lot less. It's much harder for people to travel and seek other opportunities. So yeah, so our students, especially the older ones, as they look out at the job prospects in front of them, it looks bleak. And that's again why we are thrilled that we are building in the tools and the partnerships. We're not alone in this. We have partner organizations that do training like this for adults who are connected to companies globally, and we're part of a web basically of folks who are bringing in work from the outside into Lebanon for tech workers. So yeah, it was challenging. I mean, it seems like we have a little time. I was there for the August 4th explosion. I was 2/3 of a mile from the actual site, and every room in my apartment had the windows blown except for the one that I was in. Praise God. It was very intense. And I remember walking down these streets that had been full of life, and there's not a light on, in the whole street, because everybody is cleared out and it's uninhabitable that week. And it was this image for me of this incredible potential. And Lebanon it's an amazing country, and yet right now it's in this season where the lights are off in a lot of places, and we want to be a part of turning those back on. It was so hard to watch the country decline into this but if it was ever where it was before, we know it can come back. So we want to be a part of that.
Absolutely. And you are,
Yeah.
you really
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
I trust this group enough to say, think about a question or two that you might have. And if you want to unmute yourself and ask that, now's a good time to do that. I'll just say this real quick. I was thinking, Stephen, what you said about the currency craziness. When I was there a couple of years ago, I asked Brady, I said, hey, can I get some, some local currency? And he goes, well, you got dollars. Why would you want local currency? And I said, well, just, I don't need souvenirs, but I just would like to have some. He goes, yeah, go ahead. So I went to an ATM machine and I was expecting a couple of bills to come out, and it was a stack about that big of bills that came out for $20. I mean, that's really what all it was equivalent to. So,
Right.
Clayton Braswell, imagine the ATM possibilities in a country where $20 pulls you out a stack of bills that much. Right. Any questions from anyone that here? If you identify yourself and ask your question to Stephen. If you need help unmuting yourself, I can do that. I have the power.
Rob, I would just make an observation, and Stephen, I would just make an observation that your consistent presence there is everything. That's got to be 90% of the good effect that you're having. I know just for my small part, when I went back the second year, the light came on in the kids' eyes, and it was like, oh, you cared enough.
You cared enough to come back. Yeah. Yes.
So I would just make that observation and praise you for that consistency.
Absolutely.
That's deeply encouraging. Thank you.
When you stack consistency on top of competency, you have a good thing. Any one of those alone without the other isn't everything that it can be. But when you continue to go back, I'm curious now. Stephen said that he got married this past May. He did marry a wonderful, wonderful young lady, Renee, who actually you guys met in Beirut. I think that's right.
Yes.
Have you and Renee? I mean, you both live there. You both work there. Are there plans to make a trip back and to reconnect with people again?
Definitely. I mean, we're talking about it for this year. There's also a lot of like weddings and family things this year too, and so it's just kind of a question of timing, But I had kind of penciled it in for this year, and we're hoping we can get back this year. Good. Yeah. We both care deeply. Yeah.
A sweet homecoming for both of you, because each one of you have invested so much there.
Definitely. Sure. Yeah. My wife was teaching at an international school, and then in her off hours was volunteer teaching in different refugee camps. So she was doing adult education and English and other things. She's amazing. She's just across the wall, so I don't know if hopefully she can hear me talking, saying nice things about her. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments, or even just words of encouragement for Stephen? Obviously, he's not just a giver of encouragement, but he's also a person that can receive that too. Trying to see on here. There we go.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask this, Stephen, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past. I didn't really understand until I went to Beirut the first time what a complex, like, religious cocktail it is.
Yes.
Moving from a Christian neighborhood to a Muslim neighborhood to a Druze neighborhood, and not even sometimes knowing the difference between those. But just talk a little bit about some of the, just kind of the religious context that we're dealing with when we talk about Beirut, and some of the obstacles that creates, and maybe some of the opportunities too.
Absolutely. I think there's both. I think it's very perceptive. I also just want to say Rob has been such a consistent encourager and support over the years. I meant to say that at the beginning, and I just love him. So anyways, I want to brag on you really quick, but in Beirut, you've got, there's Islam, and both there's a strong Shia and a strong Sunni presence in Lebanon, which is unlike most other countries in the region. There's also Christian. It's mostly Maronite Catholic, but there are other sects of Christianity, and there's Druze, and there's a lot of different groups. And prior to the 1970s, my understanding is that there was a lot of harmony between the groups. I mean, people kind of stayed to their areas, but there wasn't really ill will between different groups for a long period of time. The Civil War in the late 70s and 80s changed all of that because people were fighting not based on their location only, but their religious group, and so even within the Muslim groups, Shias were against Sunnis and against Christians. And so the country was fighting over control of the country based on their religious sect. Even after peace happens and people put the guns away and all of that, they set up a new political system where the presidency, the prime minister, and the speaker of parliament are all from the three main groups in Lebanon. So the president's Christian, speaker of parliament is Shia, and the prime minister is Sunni. So that created this dynamic where any legislation or anything that comes through has the potential to benefit one group more than the other one. And because there's this recent history of civil war, people are always a little bit wary about what that other leader or what that other group is going to do, which makes it very hard to do anything for the sake of the whole country, right? Because people are worried that their group is going to get taken advantage of, like it has happened in the past. And if you follow the region at all, that none of those groups are on their own. There's other countries in the background, funding and influencing those interactions. So it's interesting from a political point of view, but a very frustrating place to try to make national level change sometimes. And because of that, CodeBrave has stayed intentionally unaffiliated in terms of our religious standing in the group, because once we took a side with one organization, it would be very hard to reach other parts of the country. And so on an organization-wide level, we are totally unaffiliated, though there are people within the organization who may have, Christian faith, there are, people with Muslim faith that work in the organization too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think about, by the way, Stephen's from Texas. He's been all over the place. He's from Texas. He's worked for Chick-fil-A. So I can make Chick-fil-A references. I can make Chick-fil-A references and it works with him. But if you're here from Atlanta, you're from the Southeast, you kind of you know what Chick-fil-A is. And I think Chick-fil-A is one of those companies also that a lot of people fly the banner of, it's a Christian company, it's a Christian company, it's a Christian company. Well, Chick-fil-A is a company that's built on unapologetically some Christian values, but to say that all of the that everybody owns and operates a store is a Christian or is of a particular religion, that's foolish. That's not accurate. And I think that's one of the things that's really unique about Chick-fil-A is it's created a safe place for people who with a certain set of values and a certain vision for business to do business and to do it in a best-in-class way. And it's kind of in Youth Reach International's DNA to look for those kind of organizations that to partner with that are unapologetically making space at the table for everybody. That's language we use a lot at Youth Reach International and our church here in Atlanta also. But that is made up of a number of people who unapologetically come from a Christian faith, a Christian worldview. And one of the great challenges you'll notice when I first started tonight, we talked about Youth Reach International. In our mission statement, we're committed to spiritual formation, positive role models, and practical life skills. Well, we're deep into the practical life skills stuff right now with CodeBrave for the purpose of helping to kind of connect some dots, some other people that we know in Lebanon and some people that we think can be mobilized to become mentors and to also help Stephen and Clem care for the teachers and the mentors that they have for the kids right now. But obviously we want to include that third aspect, which for us is really that first aspect. Sometimes we can't get to it right out of the gate. Sometimes we do have to get at this later, but we want there to be healthy spiritual formation going on in this to the degree that the CodeBrave leadership wants that as well. And they kind of do have to kind of step back sometimes. Tim, Sheila, Catherine, you remember Sister Barbara at St. Nicholas Orphanage in Novosibirsk. She flat out kind of ran interference with us a lot of times with the local patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church. And she let us do a lot of the spiritual formation stuff. And she said, I'm just here educating the kids. I bail them out of prison. I keep them off the street. What they do is what they do. What I do is what I do. And that's kind of the way that, the partnership worked there. And the priest was no fool. He knew what that, what that looked like. Sister Barbara, a Polish nun living in Siberia, she knew the space in their overall ministry model that she had to occupy. And then through partnership, we were able to come in, not we, but Nastya and Ruslan and Olga and so many others were able to come in and be a steady, always consistent presence in these kids' lives, not through some kind of official mandate or program, but through that one-on-one relationship. And that's kind of what we're working to boil down to. And we'll get there. Stephen and I have scratched our heads over a great 3 or 4 great cups of coffee in Minneapolis last year going, how does this work? Like we're gonna figure it out. We really are. But we're starting with where the need is, the need and the invitation is the greatest, and where the momentum is the greatest right now. And that's around this idea of life skills training. So Stephen, thank you for opening up your heart, opening up some of your history, some of your passion to us tonight. I so wish I could, let you connect with Ronaldo and you'd really know who Tim and Sheila were, and you would be amazed by Vic and Mary. And man, Clayton can tell you stories. He knows Jim Pack, so there's always good stories there. I mean, I wish I could just break it down so you could get to know all of these folks. But let's consider this as the beginning of a steady, regular interaction with each other instead of just a one-off thing. Because like Tim said, consistency is what's made your impact special in Beirut. And we believe that the consistency that we're going to have in our partnership with CodeBrave going forward is not just going to do some great things in Beirut. We're looking forward to that. And it's not going to only create a model that we had a guy on our call today from Russia who's very curious in learning about this, because he said, you don't need to tell Russians that we have, that learning technical skills and programming skills lead to a better future. That's part of their DNA. They're ready to understand that and to practice that. So we're going to do some good in a lot of different places, but we're also going to build some really special relationships between us and some of the people that are on this call tonight. I think will be a part of that too. So I appreciate all of you being here. Most of you have spent way too much time the last 30 years listening to me talk about this stuff and other stuff, but you keep coming back for some reason. And for that, I'm very grateful. Hope all of you have a wonderful night tonight. And thank you again for joining us, and hope you have a great weekend.